What's up, everybody? Welcome to TeslaFix. My name is Jan, and today we have an episode which I also find very interesting, the topic we're going to discuss today. Today we're going to have to talk again about the Model 3 because it's the big news. You have to get it out there. And we're going to put everything into perspective a little bit onto the supply chain a little bit. And in that direction, we're going to go. And yeah, I have a special guest for this today. And let's see who it is.
Welcome to TeslaFix. Make sure to subscribe and like this episode.
Jeff, here he is. Jeff, thank you for being on the podcast again.
Great to be with you.
We got great feedback from the last episode we did also together because you're working you really know your stuff in the supply chain game, and that's why I have to bring you on, because I think the Model 3 is pretty much such an important also stepping stone, because the production, how the kind of production they are doing in Shanghai is like the newest version of their line. And now, of course, it's interesting. Will this be adapted in Germany, for example? Speculations around that topic would be interesting for me. Maybe you have something, or your viewpoint on this would be interesting. But I think we could start first by you telling the audience what you're doing right now, or what you're working on. What was your highlight in the last weeks?
Yeah, so I'm Jeff. I have a kind of an extensive background in supply chain, working at multiple Fortune 100 companies, either running supply chain. I was also chief quality officer, and definitely have been a fan and avid watcher of Tesla and owner of a Tesla vehicle for the last 10 years. And I'm very interested in a lot of the recent developments and what the company is doing. I thought, getting to your question around the Model 3 launch, I thought that, launching out of Shanghai actually makes a lot of sense to me in terms of Tesla getting a new product to market, and the speed at which that, not only that factory works, but that the close proximity of that supply chain. I believe they're almost 95% now locally sourced to build a vehicle, and that's significant. I don't think any other Tesla factory is near that. And what that allows them to do is allows them to move a lot quicker, both from a development perspective and as well as the supply chain, the rate at which the inventory turns and moves through the supply base and the Shanghai factory is going to be a lot more rapid, which is going to bring down their cost structure and improve their cash position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's absolutely stunning how they manage this, and I think the Chinese also are so good at mass manufacturing, and especially with Tesla having this special position of owning their own company there, which is almost unprecedented as far as I'm informed. I think they did a great job also for the Chinese EV market, or the Chinese EV production overall. Tesla seems also to be there in some kind of pole position. That's my feeling. That's not so rational. I haven't compared the numbers actually, but as far as I've heard, I mean, the cost structure still, Tesla produces cheaper than some of the competitors like BYD, for example, even. Besides, they are one of the biggest producers behind Tesla. So, yeah, how do you see it? How is the position of Tesla in China? What's your feeling there? Do you agree, or do you think
well, they're regarded
close?
They're from a technology perspective and respect perspective, they're very respected by the local Chinese. They've got I think China is very strategically interested in having Tesla in China, because China wants to be the number one exporter of EVs, and they actually are, and they want that position to that lead to continue and to grow. And China started all the way back many years ago from the mineral level and working their way up the whole supply chain. So this has been a multi-year, almost multi-decade plan for them to really kind of dominate an auto and use the transition of EV. But Tesla's doing very well there. There are many other car manufacturers, Chinese national Chinese brands in China. There's also foreign brands building in China.
Yeah.
There are companies like BYD that are producing more vehicles, more hybrids, more
Yeah.
pure EVs now, actually, than
Hmm.
Tesla in China. Tesla is usually a number 2 when you look at the domestic rankings, and including domestic and export. And
Hmm.
BYD's, they're growing significantly in volume, but BYD has products positioned at price points that Tesla currently doesn't play at today.
Hmm.
So if you were to take the price points, this 30,000 US dollars and above where Tesla is really playing, Tesla is dominating and doing very well. But as soon as you start adding in these additional price
Hmm.
levels, that this is where the BYDs and some of the other companies of the world, some of the other companies, Chinese nationals have are getting a lot of volume out of. But where I would leave it with China, and there's some pretty good data out on Twitter that Tesla makes more gross profit than so Tesla makes about 53%, I think, of the gross profit on
Hmm.
EVs. So if you're talking about profit dollars coming into a company, all these other companies can be producing. There's so many other companies producing, but if you added them all together, including BYD, their gross profit to add it together is less than Tesla's. And I think for
That's
every
crazy.
BYD has to ship about 4.2 to 4.5, call it vehicles. You don't ship a tenth of a vehicle, but 4.2 to 4.5 vehicles to get the gross profit of a Tesla, of one Tesla being shipped. So that's where you really want to win. If you look at kind of the Apples of the world,
Yeah.
that's where they're winning in the gross profit game. Others can ship volume. But I think Tesla's going to be able to do both meaningfully well. And I think they're going to continue to win in the gross profit realm. Again, more than half of the gross profit of all the China makers, and it takes a BYD about 4 to 4.5 vehicles to have the equivalent gross profit of one Tesla.
Hmm. Crazy. Yeah, that's absolutely astonishing. I haven't heard about this number that it was 50%, which or more than
Yeah,
50%, which is yeah, that's ridiculous. That's crazy.
yeah, and I think Model
Absolutely.
3 is going to take it to a whole new level.
Okay, and yeah, interesting stuff. I think this is a perfect timing here to just show a video of that was released in China recently. You've also retweeted this, so I'm gonna bring it up here. It's like a commercial about the Model 3 for 1 second, and I think this is fitting, and then we can just move on to the Model 3 and talk about this. Yeah. Yeah, pretty interesting stuff. I hope this wasn't too loud. I haven't checked it before. That
Great.
okay, perfect. So no ears for damage here in this episode. That's good. Yeah, but interesting. I really also like the of course the animations of the fonts in the Chinese symbols, and yeah. So yeah, but Model 3 in that sense, in the picture now. I mean, we've talked about the Shanghai factory now, like the state it was actually, and now maybe we can go into the direction that what does Model 3 have an impact on the overall maybe supply chain or even implications? Will these lines be adapted somewhere? Can we see something like this? Can we expect something like this? And what's your view on the Model 3 and the impact on to the
Yeah, for
supply
Tesla
chain
in the
there?
world, I mean, the Model 3 is the number one selling EV ever. It's, there's more Model 3 sold to date, because it started a couple years earlier than the Model Y. The Model Y will overtake
Hmm.
it in the near term, but the Tesla's number one vehicle ever sold, and really the number one EV sold, is the Model 3. So it's known, it's kind of known worldwide. Um, and from a supply chain perspective, Tesla can have that conversation with all of their supply chain partners, all of their partners involved in construction and assembly of lines and tooling and fixturing and so forth, and say, look, you're working on the most successful EV product line ever, and we're making
Hmm.
it better. We're making it better in every way. And I think Tesla started, and what's that going to do? What's that going to do for Tesla? It's going to, it gives them a fair amount of, they have leverage in so many points of their business, because that same conversation, like, look, do you want a part on the Model Y? Model Y is the number one selling vehicle right now, and there's no other car in the world that is built in greater volume than the Model Y. So Tesla's got tremendous leverage already, and I think Model 3 being the number one vehicle ever sold, and just these refinements they've done. Now, they've changed a lot more parts than I thought they were actually going to do.
Hmm.
But I think it's going to be a case of, this is the sportier, kind of nicer, current looking vehicle that's going to cost, it's going to be cheaper for them to build. I think that's going to be the end game for Tesla. In terms of the line, in terms of how it's built, we don't know. We don't have a lot of details. I think one of these cars needs to be purchased and torn down for us to really understand, because
Yeah.
Tesla, I mean, notably, they added a lot of features. They've
Hmm.
that even things that you think were there before are actually much different. Like even the main screen's a better looking screen, better contrast ratio, and so forth. They added the second screen. They've added double pane glass, and in the rear, they've added a number of things for ride
Soundproofing. Yeah.
comfort and noise.
Hmm.
And the paint system, that ultra red paint system, I'm sure is not cheap. Um, and so they've added a number of things, but we'd have to really like look under what I think what great OEMs do
Hmm.
is they figure out how to start at the consumer and start at like the pain points and like what's valuable to a consumer, and they
Yeah.
give them that. And then what they do is they look under the quote unquote under the hood of like things they can't see, and then they figure out, can I simplify, can I combine parts that are in the chassis? If there's 70 parts in the chassis today, can I get it down to 20? I don't think these are castings at this point. um, I mean, I don't think these are dual castings. Like, they were able
Hmm.
to take 70 parts and get it down to two. But I
Yeah.
do think they were able to probably combine and simplify a lot of the construction
Hmm.
of the vehicle. We'll hear more. I think they probably worked a lot on weight, and
Hmm.
the mass of the vehicle, so they can get this greater range. Um, so I think they've developed something that's going to work great for Shanghai, and for Shanghai to do a bulk of the volume. Now,
Yeah.
for this vehicle to be built in the U.S., I think the reason it's not announced this is just me purely speculating. I've no idea if it's correct or not, but I believe that they're going to be going for the new M3P battery from Cattle, and I also believe that they may be working on structural castings for the U.S. version, because again, they take the amount of labor down and get greater automation in, which is what you would need in the U.S. From a cost structure perspective. So I think they have work on the chassis, and I think they have work on the battery system for this to be started up in the U.S.
Hmm.
For delivery here. For Europe, I think they're going to do really the bulk of the deliveries. I mean, it's all going to come out of Shanghai, I believe. I don't think they're going to be
Hmm.
replicating this line um, much more than that, but I don't know. I mean, this
Hmm.
product could be a huge hit. I mean, think of it, it's more of like a shrunken down Model S.
Hmm.
Um, and if anybody's driven the latest, Model S refresh or Model S Plaid, it is one incredible vehicle in terms of how it handles, how it drives. And the Model 3 has always been a great vehicle at its price point. I
Hmm.
just think they made it better. Again, they started at the consumer, and they worked backwards to focus on ride comfort, noise, and then the features in the vehicle. And it's funny because I drive I have a Model S and an X, the ones with the yoke. And once I moved to that
Hmm.
yoke, and getting rid of the steering wheels, the stalks, and everything. It's a much better experience. I actually had a loaner car the other day, and I was driving it, and I was like, "Wow, it's meaningfully better." At first, it was a little bit like, how do I adjust to this? These turn signals being on the
Yeah.
steering wheel and it being buttons. But once you do,
Yeah.
it's really they've really, from a human factors perspective, I think they've done a really good job.
Yeah, I think with Tesla, it's the combination of, listening to the customers, of course, but also this radical approach of just getting rid of everything they can. Apple is similar in that sense. Apple, for the longest part, really reduced everything down to the max as they could. Everything that was too janky, they got rid of. They were the first who got rid of the line in of the phone, and now look at the phones. No phone has a line in anymore, and it's for me it's similar, because you could really see that also design trends were picked up by other car manufacturers, by Tesla. The bigger screen, the layout of the like
Minimalistic, yeah.
tidied up board, just this tidied up table almost. You're sitting on like more or less on a table where with a little bit of wood. Before that, the design that they had before, but it's interesting that those minimalistic approaches. Many car manufacturers, besides the Germans, we all know they love their buttons. It's going to take so long till they get rid of everything, but I think this is an overall design trend that is Tesla also setting here. And I also think that the Model 3 is so special in the design. This will make huge waves, I think. And I think with that product, especially for the Chinese market, they really nailed it here, because they are very technology focused. Mercedes presented at the IAA in Germany, the automotive fair here. A crazy CLA, the CLA class of Mercedes. Oh God, it's it looks like a gaming PC for 12-year-olds or something. But this is the kind of luxury that I think this is also more for the Chinese market, because they love these crazy shiny things in that sense. But that's just a concept, of course. But what I mean is that the Model 3 will have a significant impact on the Chinese market, and I think the sales are good. So how is your thoughts there? Is the Model 3 doing good in China, or have you heard of some numbers, or is it just the overall perception?
Everything is non-official, not from Tesla, but I've heard the orders are very strong, and I think they've done a good job transitioning lines too. I think they've done a very good stair-step approach. By the way, the Shanghai team is very strong operationally, and that team actually spends a lot of time, I think, traveling around the world to help in other sites too, and help with, in trying to get some more of kind of a common approach to building product and to ramping new products. So I think they've done a really good job of phasing down and not missing. Like the August numbers were huge. There was like 84,000 through August. So they did a good job of not taking a huge drop down. I think they took a little bit in this first week of September, but I think they're gonna come back strong. There's rumors that they're already running at 80% of the run rate of the original Model 3. Again, this is not from Tesla, but
of course.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think they've done a pretty good, smooth transition. I'm very excited to see that. I think they're gonna get a lot of these out. There's a lot of pictures of trailers, going out, heading to Europe, arriving in Europe already. So I think this is gonna be a pretty big launch and a very big Q4, I think.
I was so close to pull the trigger on this thing. My reasoning came to my senses for 1 second again, because I was so hyped on this car, because it was so surprising as well. And I don't own a Tesla right now still, and I always wanted to do that. But for me, it doesn't make sense, because I have to build up more cushion to really do this, and I want to invest in the company. That's my thing. I just thought, okay, a car loan for 500 euros a month, maybe I should buy 2 Tesla stocks a month. And this is no financial advice here. A huge disclaimer, of course. I don't recommend anything
everyone's
here.
Different. Do what's comfortable
Yeah.
for you, and
Mhm.
eventually, yeah, it'll be there, and it'll be great, I'm sure.
Yeah, and of course, one day I'm gonna have it, and I'm gonna drive it with a smile on my face, because I really like this, and I also think they are tackling here also a segment with the sedans again. I mean, in Europe, the smaller cars are more popular, of course, also from the price perspective, but it's just a cost thing. I think when people could decide, they would go with the sedan category as well, because we also have huge successful sedan models in Germany or from Germany. Of course, the BMW 3 Series was such a big deal years for years now, and the sportiness factor is a huge deal also here, because we have, of course, the Autobahn, and people are putting the pedal to the metal really
I
in the
saw a
Autobahn.
Model S Plaid on the Autobahn.
That you've said that, because this sparked also a huge controversy online, that, oh my god, they got rid of the stocks. How do you change the how do you say, the to put it in
Yeah.
drive neutral and everything, the
Oh, it's on the screen, yeah.
yeah, exactly, to swipe. I mean, you lean forward and swipe. It's not a big deal in my opinion, but I'm also pretty like new things and new ways of doing stuff. So for me also the yoke is super interesting, and it's interesting to hear that if you get used to it, it's good. Maybe for some viewers who also don't
It
believe
is.
in
It is. The
reducing.
other thing is
So
with the forward and reverse, if you allow it, the car has a setting where it
mhm,
will basically utilize AI and say, look, if there's objects behind you, you're obviously not
mhm,
going in reverse. And if it's very clear, you're probably going forward. And also, like, what was your last movement? Were you like pulling into a garage or pulling out? So basically, every time I pull out of my garage, it already knows I want to go forward. And all I have to do is
mhm,
tap the brake, and then the car, I can just start, moving the
mhm,
car forward. I don't have to even shift the car anymore.
mhm. Yeah, that's cool. A cool feature. Some people also criticize this because, yeah, it has to learn the stuff and it has to be your user pattern. But with time, this will get better and better. And I think the assumption of the car, when it has to drive itself fully, it has to make these decisions anyway. So
Yeah.
I think the approach of Tesla reducing this, going forward to new vehicle, yeah, like to transportation era, it makes absolutely sense to get rid of the stuff now, because they are working on the future, not on the past. And yeah, it's pretty interesting to see that. And yeah, so in terms of with Model 3, what was also something that stood out for you, that you said, okay, this was super interesting, or these numbers really surprised me? Can you think of anything, or is it a
Well,
bad
I'll say
question?
the good and the
Mm,
bad thing. Not or the good and the challenging thing. Maybe I think the good thing is I liked that they actually elevated their prices a bit at launch, because
mhm,
that's reality. Um, and over time, you know, every component, every new part, they said over 50% of the parts are new. Well, all those parts need to get to their own peak run rate in their supply chain. They got to get to their
mhm,
yield. They got to get to their quality targets. And until they're at those targets, they're going to cost more. So
mhm,
I like the fact that until the car is at full volume,
mhm,
that it's a little bit more expensive. Um, I would say that just the downside is, like, Model 3 is a global product. It's available
mhm,
everywhere. And normally, when companies get to global scale, when they bring out the next version of it, they launch it at global scale. So the fact that the Model 3, like, I can't get one in the
mhm.
US. And normally the US is the first for
Yeah,
everything from Tesla, right?
yeah.
So um, someone's got to be first, but usually within a month or two, like, all really they should be able to globally launch within a month or two.
Mhm,
And there's a good reason for it. I think it's a couple of the reasons that I brought up before around the chassis and maybe the battery. But I would say that's one of the challenging things for Tesla, is to go from a global product and then to launch it not globally. I don't think they drew up the plan that way.
mhm,
But in terms of the vehicle itself, I love the styling. I love what they did with the styling. Um,
mhm,
and I love that they worked on things like the comfort, the seats,
Yeah.
the road noise. They worked on things that are meaningful to consumers, and then they further simplified the interior. So you're it kind of has a little bit more of a premium feel,
Hmm.
and and
Exactly.
and and I think that they're going to be able to build this at a cost structure that's cheaper than the previous
Hmm.
Model 3. So, but we'll have to see what the teardown shows. But plenty to like in terms of how they focus on the consumer. And then I think the challenge for Tesla is like, how do they get this back in the global distribution as quickly as possible?
Hmm. Yeah, pretty interesting to see this. And you've mentioned the cost structure, and I wanted to know if I've also asked this Farzad the last episode he was on here. He was on recently, and I asked him, where do you think the pricing, the end pricing, when everything is when Tesla moves comfortably into their price brackets, that the whole ecosystem of Tesla fits. So we have the Model Y, we have the Model S and X, then we have the Model Y, then we have the lower the small sized car that Tesla is producing at Mexico. Then, so where do you think this car will settle in? Not accounting to inflation, let's just say this inflation that we have right now, just like the pricing now. What do you think?
Yeah, I
This could
think the
be.
Model 3 will be somewhere in the 27 to
Oh, really?
$35,000 range.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's possible. Again, with time and getting it to scale, I don't think Tesla would have refreshed this vehicle and with just their plan in mind in terms of making things cheaper or making them less expensive and to drive scale. I don't think they would purposely develop a more expensive or even an equivalently
Mm-hmm.
expensive vehicle. So I think when they get it to scale, they'll be able to take it down meaningfully, maybe below $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
But there are plenty of incentives globally
Yeah.
when you buy a car at this level, to where to the consumer they're already going to see it there, if not lower. So yeah, and then I think Tesla's working on a Gen 3 vehicle that they'll I think they're going to surprise us. It's going to be in the mid 20s US dollars, maybe even lower. So
Mm-hmm.
um, so yeah, I think they're going to be able to really and 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 the volumes at these price points, it really goes exponential. It's not linear. You take 1,000, oh, it goes up 3%. It gets exponential pretty quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the world still doesn't understand yet that the average transaction price for a Model 3 or a Model Y is less than the average transaction price for an ICE vehicle. And over time, though, that will be clear. And consumers will talk, word of mouth. The net promoter score for Tesla is in the 90%, it's 95, 97%. It's higher, it's the highest in the auto industry, and it may be the highest in actually most other industries as well. So people buy their Teslas, they love them, they tell their friends about them, and they would purchase them again. That's what you want. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about the Model 3 and getting the volume scale. And I think right behind that, it's going to take some time, but I think they'll refresh the Model Y soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also the Juniper project, or their project name. I also think that, or I've discussed this also with Farzad last time, that the expansion of Giga Berlin now could be that they can make the Juniper line there and then transition with a smooth transition to the other line, and then retool the line back again on the other side of the factory. I think this
Yeah,
maybe. I mean, this is just total speculation, of course, but
sure.
this was pretty plausible to me. I mean, Model 3 production in Germany is unlikely because it's so near to, or yeah, it's kind of near to China. But
Right, right.
the delivery here works almost flawlessly. The cars arrive here, everything's fine. So they're gonna import, I think, the Model 3 here, like you said, also. But yeah, but how you see this as a possibility?
For Model 3 in Berlin, remote. I think they'll import it. And I think Berlin will focus on Model Y and then eventually the Gen 3 vehicle or
Hmm.
vehicles in plural.
Yeah, yeah. This makes absolutely sense. I also think so. And Tesla also showed in the shareholder meeting the also the van under a sheet. What Where do you think this will be produced? That's a question that I'm asking me all the time. But maybe you have a little bit better understanding of the whole supply chain and everything, and then you can maybe give a tip or a hint at least. I mean, of course, we don't know anything here. It's just speculation, but
Yeah,
um,
sure. I
yeah.
think in multiple markets, I think a van that can be high range and can handle like a large capacity from a mass perspective and from a volume perspective,
Hmm.
I think it would be very popular. And there's a lot of these sold. I
Hmm.
think the U.S. number per year, I think, is somewhere in like 375,000 per year. So it's not
Hmm.
an insignificant number. So
Hmm.
it makes sense for Tesla to serve this because they're working on the semi and they're
Hmm.
working on semi production now and getting that production line built, and to just go from sedans and cars and trucks to not have this kind of this larger van or service vehicle. I don't think. I mean, I actually think Tesla should do a minivan, like a
Hmm.
family
Yeah,
minivan too.
absolutely,
But these are all
absolutely.
things like we're thinking like what they think we should do or not do. I think they're trying to really just cut over traditional ICE transportation to more sustainable transportation and do it in an efficient way. So it takes a number of years for them to figure out how to get the efficiency, how to get the performance, and how to get
Hmm.
the specifications right so you can really be in a tier. I think that's what one of the reasons Cybertruck has taken a bit of time, because they have to really master the performance and the whole thing, the performance, the cost structure, everything for it to be successful. And Tesla really
Hmm.
thinks in multiple year time frames. They're not just trying to get a
Yeah,
product out there to fill a slot.
yeah, of course. Yeah. Yes, makes sense. And with you've mentioned now Cybertruck, and I also think this thing opens up this new vehicle category, and this will be like very important for Tesla. Also a huge milestone because it's cool because the Cybertruck is built domestically and also for the market locally, actually, because I pre-ordered one, but I don't assume that this is gonna arrive next year in Germany. So it's gonna take some years to please the American market at first because the competition there is way higher. It's such an important category for the US. That's why I think they're gonna maybe even release it, like Matthew Donegan and Ryan also hinted at, that they might release it in China first, even before they're gonna release it in Europe. So I shouldn't do my hopes so high, but yeah, let's see. I mean, this could be also good, but I think this opens up this Pandora's box of utility vehicles, and yeah, it's also technological, very similar like the semi with the three motors that one additional motor just kicks in when it's needed and everything like this for the efficiency and everything. So I think they have many synergies with the semi there. So yeah, but how do you see the impact of the Cybertruck in that sense?
I mean, in America, I mean, people are going crazy about this
Yeah,
thing. There's almost 2 million pre-orders
yeah,
for the vehicle. I mean, it's the number one selling segment. The pickup truck is the number one selling segment in the U.S. and people love their trucks here. So, and I think
yeah.
what Cybertruck's going to do is it's going to attract buyers that never have owned a pickup truck or never would have owned a pickup truck. Me, for example, I have one on order.
Hmm.
I would have never bought or owned a pickup truck, never.
Yeah.
But I think the I think this vehicle is going to transcend categories. It's not just you can't just look at pickup truck. I think it's such a cool, iconic looking vehicle. It's going to change the look of the roads. So
Yeah.
there's plenty of them out there in the U.S. now doing testing, all kinds of terrains, all kinds of test plans they're putting them through. And I think a lot of people can see this on Twitter. There's handfuls of them coming out now every day off the lines in Texas. So they're getting closer and closer. Elon drove something called the production candidate, which is the phase right before mass production. So
Mm-hmm.
we're getting really close, I think, to a launch here, and I think it's going to be an exceptional vehicle. Elon said it's going to be the best vehicle they've ever done, and but I think they're trying to get it right from a quality perspective, and they're trying to get everything dialed in. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the U.S. automakers are frightened of this vehicle. You've seen some pricing moves ahead of the launch from competitors, but um, right now, the U.S. automakers don't know how to make an EV below $40 or even $50,000 profitably. Actually, none of the U.S. automakers are profitable in the EV segment, and it's not even close.
Mm-hmm.
So I think with Tesla
Crazy, yeah.
entering this new category is very concerning for them. But now Tesla's got to execute and really get the product to scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. I hope also that they gonna make it faster than or earlier than late. But I think they are on a good track there, and I also think, yeah, Cybertruck is in the bag. Model 3, of course, was surprisingly announced because it leaked way before, and I think it was also a good move, the surprise moment. And yeah, you've mentioned the other car manufacturers in the US. Maybe we can look above the pond again to Europe and look at what VW recently talked about. Here's a tweet of Sawyer Merritt again, where the VW CEO said, "The Chinese have learned to build cars in recent decades. However, the established European manufacturers still have advantages in comparison. We have the vehicle know-how, we have the quality level, we have a brand heritage. The new ones don't have that." So is this foolish or is it totally sound what he just said? I mean, you've also already commented here. You can see it below here. Yeah, maybe you can talk about your tweet here and your opinion on this, because, yeah, I
Yeah,
have
I
my
mean,
own
forever.
opinion on this
I
as
mean,
well.
I spent a couple of decades. I mean, ramped the Android product line, and we're working with Motorola and for Google as well. And
Mm-hmm.
for years, we thought. I mean, we were respectful of the Chinese. We saw them coming, but a lot of people thought that there would never be the day where they're actually in the U.S. and they're selling meaningful volumes, and they are. And they sometimes they're doing it under different branding and different names, but they're a big part of the global market. They're all over Europe, they're all over South America as well, and nobody thought. Everybody kind of said the same things back then about smartphones as they are saying now about vehicles. Um, but what I would say, I'm a little bit surprised that the European Union isn't more focused on localization of production and just allowing all these
Absolutely.
imports. I mean, Tesla built a factory and put the investment in, and they plan to do a bulk of their volume locally. And I mean, I think they should be driving these some of these all the Chinese manufacturers. Like, you can't just import, like you've got to set up localized manufacturing. And I think this is where the Chinese are going to struggle a bit, because if you
Mm-hmm.
tell right now, like for example, BYD is highly manual in terms of their assembly. Do they have some automation? Of course they do. But if you compare them to a Tesla, like BYD has 660,000 employees. Now they do more than make cars. They make battery systems. They make small batteries for auto. They also have an electronics business. But even if you take out 100K for each one of those, they're still at 400K plus. And Tesla's at 160,000 employees. So the, why am I bringing this up? I think the Chinese manufacturers are going to struggle if they're made to go to Europe and set up manufacturing there with local.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to struggle because they don't have enough automation. Same thing for in the U.S. as well. There's a huge import duty if they were to try to import
Yeah.
here. So I'm surprised that the European Union want to be a little bit more protectionist about this. And I think that they're going to struggle on if they do have to build locally, I think they're going to struggle with their cost structure, and I think they're also going to struggle a little bit with software localization for all the
Hmm.
markets. I think that having that global ubiquitous software platform like a
Hmm.
Tesla does, you get in a Tesla anywhere and it looks the same. I think they're going to struggle a little bit with that.
Hmm. And I think also a note that I found very interesting when I also read this thing was that actually Mercedes, a traditional German car manufacturer, is pretty much partnering with Geely now to produce the Smart One, for example. They have a release of the Smart One. That's a partnership with Geely or Geely, I don't know how it's pronounced, but as well. And it's interesting because now the Germans take the Chinese manufacturers into the boat and partner with them. But he's talking about, we have our brand heritage and everything. Yeah, in the EV space, we don't have any heritage at all. So we have
Right.
heritage in maybe the interior and everything, but we could also see the quality declined also in Germany, we have to say. The Mercedes has got cheaper and cheaper from the material standpoint as well. Many Germans were furious about some of the stuff because we love those details. And VW as well. The ID.3 was, before they had this facelift, the Germans were furious about this car. They said, "Oh, it feels so cheap. It's so plasticky. It's not good quality. Not what we're used to." Because they have to cut costs so much. Yeah,
they're struggling with the unit economics because the battery takes up right now. They don't have the batteries. They don't have the EV supply chain. They don't have the battery supply chain. That's part of it. So what happens is these things that are not normally in the unit economics to make a nice vehicle, that are in the EV unit economics, they struggle with that part of the supply chain. So their cost structure is prohibitive. So they have to then cut in all these areas that are very visible to consumers. And that's everybody's caught right now, again, except Tesla. And like, how do you do this? How do you deliver something that's beautiful that everybody wants, but then, you get it at the right price point and you're profitable? And they're struggling. And they're actually being resistive a little bit too to just the whole transition to EV.
Absolutely.
I mean, BMW's recently raised their prices. Porsche has elevated their pricing, and their volumes in North America went down by over 30% when they did that. So, I think they're struggling a bit with this, and they're kind of like, is this really happening? And what they have to do is they have to get their supply chain under control. They've got to get supply agreements in place. They've got to get some volume going, and they have to do this here pretty quickly. And they've got to get better at designing for efficiency or designing for cost. And if they don't do those three things, they're going to continue to struggle, and the Chinese are going to continue to make more inroads into Europe. But again, if I'm the European Union, I would want them to build locally.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to struggle when they have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Germans or the German car manufacturers also underestimate also their own history in that sense, because, for example, Mercedes targeted the luxury segment for a long, long time. And then they shifted their strategy to go a little bit broader, to make more, to get more customers on board. This kind of flopped at first, but they had their A class, for example, the A series of cars, which are a little bit more compact for the European market. I mean, and now they're going back because, oh God, we can't produce cheap or cost effective. Let's just say we want to target the premium segment now, and now they have to target the premium segment, of course, because, but I think they're pulling their own neck up. I don't know. It's horrible. And also when you see especially when you see you see how far behind they are if they announce in their prototype or their vision the CLA that Mercedes or CLA Mercedes showed at the IAA automotive show there in Munich recently. It just shows, look, this is a thing we want to, that's our vision, and we consider to having an internal combustion engine inside of this thing. So this means again no frunk again. Because this whole concept is for both for electric vehicles and also for internal combustion engine vehicles. And this shows, I mean, this is down the line 7 years from now or 10 years. That's their vision. And their vision includes internal combustion engines still. And BMW does the same thing. That's pretty horrible, actually. So, yeah. Let's see how the story goes. But, Jeff, I know you have to jump. That's why we have to make a break here, sadly, but it was pretty interesting having you on, and I'm always like you on the channel. Maybe you have something for our audience regarding this topics we discussed. What do you think the whole industry is heading? One sentence, or maybe you can just say your last words here on this episode for the audience.
I think
what's
it all
on
comes
your heart?
down to yeah, sure, Jan. Thanks for having me on. It's great to speak with you and with your followers. I think this is all coming down to EV adoption, and EV adoption is growing. It's going past the tipping point. I think it's over north of 13% globally. It's better in Europe and China than it is in the U.S., but it's growing at a significant. Even in the U.S., it's growing at a rate of 40% plus per year. So that is the magnet in this whole equation, and whether you're a Tesla fanatic or you're some other manufacturer, but that is to me the magnet in this whole piece. And Tesla is literally positioned better from a supply chain perspective, from a product roadmap perspective, and just from like the experience in global distribution. And I think they're in a really good spot to help not only lead this adoption, but for it to continue to grow. And right now they're at a little bit of an interesting point here where there's some compression on gross margins. And while they basically can keep their supply base and keep their factories running pretty much at full throttle, it differs in places. But once I think the world kind of gets out of this economic malaise they're in a little bit, where these high dollar items have a high interest rate, I think you're going to see the volumes, they're going to explode to the upside. And by the time they come out of this, Tesla's going to be very close to their next generation of vehicles. And I think starting with the Model 3 with refresh, what we discussed today, I think they've really positioned themselves number one selling EV ever. And now you've got the Model Y, which will pass it. Two of the best vehicles are with Tesla. And now you've got this amazing, iconic looking Cybertruck coming to the US and probably other regions. Eventually. So Tesla's got a really bright future. And then wrap FSD as a wrapper around this whole thing. And these cars are going to have the ability to drive themselves here very soon. And you put all that together, and it's kind of a really exciting times.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Thank you, Jeff, for these great words for the end of the episode. So everybody else from the comment, please comment down below to the audience now. Is this call? And have you questions about this topic? What did we miss? Please tell us in the comments. I'm very active there. I'm going to answer everything. So Jeff, thank you very much for being on. And for our audience, there's only one last thing to say, and that's goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Wasn't this episode awesome? Let's accelerate the pace of innovation by subscribing to TeslaFix. It is my absolute favorite channel on the whole interwebs.